I'm on a mission to reach my first 1,000 subscribers, and I need your support. If you love movies, reviews, and great stories, hit that subscribe button and join me on this journey. Thank you.
The woman wearing the golden crown was the principal dancer at the prestigious Bolshoi Theater in Russia. With her curvaceous figure and captivating presence, countless officials and aristocrats vied for a moment of her attention. But Dominika was devoted solely to her career. Her mother suffered from a severe leg condition, and to secure free medical care and housing provided by the theater, Dominika had to remain at the peak of her profession. However, life is never as predictable as one hopes. During a routine performance, her dance partner inadvertently stepped on her foot, shattering the delicate bones within. When Dominika regained consciousness, she was lying in a hospital bed, her leg encased in steel pins, a clear indication of recent surgery. Reality hit her like a freight train. Her dancing career was over. 3 months later, she was discharged, able to walk again but forever changed. Upon returning home, she discovered an unexpected visitor, her uncle, Vanya, a high-ranking officer in the Russian intelligence agency. Because of his demanding job, he rarely visited. As Dominika prepared tea for him, Vanya casually presented her with an offer. "You've lost your job. How long do you think you can stay here?" he asked, leaving a briefcase on the table. "If you change your mind, come find me. Nothing in life happens by chance. We make our own paths." After Vanya left, Dominika hesitantly opened the briefcase. Inside, she found a recorder and a stack of photographs, evidence of a hushed conversation between her former dance partner and a fellow ballerina. Jealous of Dominika's coveted position, the woman had conspired with her partner to deliberately break her leg and steal the spotlight. Furious, Dominika stormed back to the Bolshoi Theater. She tracked down the treacherous duo in the dressing room's private bath and unleashed her fury upon them. Once her rage was spent, panic set in. Had she gone too far? Afraid she might have killed them, she hastily called for an ambulance before rushing home. There, she found her mother collapsed on the floor, sobbing. The caregiver who had tended to her for years had stopped coming, without Dominika's salary. The theater had ceased paying for her services. With no means of support and nowhere to turn, Dominika made the only choice left. She sought out Vanya. But Vanya was a seasoned operative, a master manipulator. He wouldn't help her for free, not even his own niece. He assigned her a task first. On Friday night at precisely 9 o'clock, she was to visit an upscale hotel, bathe, change into the red dress provided, and sit in the most conspicuous spot in the lobby bar. Her objective was simple: capture the attention of Ustin, a Russian oligarch, engage him in conversation, follow him to his suite, and at the right moment, swap his phone for an identical one. But the mission took a horrifying turn. Just as Ustin prepared to make his move, a silent assassin garroted him with a steel wire. Dominika was paralyzed with fear. With no choice, she obeyed the assassin's every instruction. He led her through the halls, disabling the hotel room's lock with a silencer-equipped pistol before escorting her to the underground parking garage. After neutralizing a guard, he whisked her away on his motorcycle. Their destination, a secluded house on the outskirts of the city. Once inside, the assassin removed his helmet, revealing his face. Then, the mastermind behind it all entered the room, Vanya. He was no longer the uncle she once knew. His expression was cold, ruthless. He made her an offer, 2 choices, both equally terrifying. "You've seen our assassin, you've seen his face. That means you have 2 options. Join the KGB and undergo specialized training, or die." The choice was no choice at all. Before departing for her new life, Dominika returned home to say goodbye to her mother. The frail woman had only one piece of advice. "Your uncle is a devil. Never give him everything. Always keep something for yourself." The car carrying Dominika sped through the snow-covered Russian countryside, taking her toward her uncertain fate. She arrived at the KGB's secret military academy, School 4. Buried deep within the frozen wasteland of Siberia, a female instructor greeted her with a single, ominous rule. First lesson: never reveal your real name. Not to anyone. Inside the academy, all recruits were known as sparrows. They were young, beautiful, plucked from every walk of life and molded into weapons of seduction. Among their many lessons, they learned how to exploit their bodies to uncover their target's weaknesses. The instructor, without hesitation, called Dominika and a male recruit forward. "Undress," she commanded. Completely, Dominika stood frozen, staring in disbelief. The instructor's voice was sharp as ice. "From the moment you were born, your body has belonged to the state. Loyalty to the motherland means abandoning shame and morality." In addition to discarding her dignity, Dominika mastered an arsenal of deadly skills: marksmanship, lockpicking, surveillance, and psychological manipulation. Just as Vanya had predicted, she was a natural spy. Excelling in every subject, she soared above her peers. But standing out had its consequences. Like a phoenix among sparrows, she was resented, envied. One night, while showering, she was ambushed by a fellow male recruit. He attacked her, naked, primal, But Dominika wasn't a helpless dancer anymore. She grabbed the steel shower handle and struck, knocking him to the ground. Blood poured from his face. The incident was serious enough to warrant an audience with the headmaster. But strangely, instead of punishment, he offered a cryptic remark. "My wife and I once watched you perform," he said. "Remember this. There are always other ways to live your life." He let her go, but the female instructor wasn't as forgiving. The following day, the instructor once again called Dominika to the front of the class. This time, she also summoned the male recruit who had attacked her. The room fell silent as she gave her next command. "Give him what he really wants." The recruit sneered, demanding that Dominika turn around. Instead, she stripped without hesitation, meeting his gaze with unwavering defiance. Faced with her unexpected confidence, the recruit faltered, flustered. He yanked his pants back on and bolted from the room. Dominika had played him perfectly. She had exposed his own insecurity, proving her ability to understand and manipulate human nature. The headmaster took note of her keen perception. In his eyes, she was ready. She had passed. Dominika was officially a sparrow. Upon her return to Russia, she barely had time to embrace her mother before the phone rang. It was Vanya. Her mother sighed, knowing her daughter might never escape his grasp. But in her heart, Dominika swore she would find a way. "I'll find a way out," she promised herself. That night, she met Vanya at a restaurant. And just as she feared, he had another job for her. Months earlier, an American CIA operative named Nash had secretly met with his informant in a Moscow park. The exchange had been interrupted by a routine police patrol. To protect his contact, Nash had drawn his pistol and fired several shots, creating a diversion. His actions allowed the informant to escape while he fled to the U.S. Embassy, vanishing before Russian intelligence could track him down. Now, Russian intelligence had found him again, this time in Budapest. Vanya wanted Dominika to get close to Nash, gain his trust, and uncover the identity of the traitor leaking information to him. Dominika didn't want to be a spy, but Vanya, ever the manipulator, dangled the perfect bait. "Complete this mission, and you'll be free." She knew it was a lie, but with no other options, she accepted. Arriving in Budapest, she was placed in a safe house with Marta, a veteran sparrow who had spent years operating in the city. Marta was blunt, warning Dominika about the local intelligence chief, an old man with a taste for younger women. "Watch yourself around him," she advised. Marta wasn't exaggerating. The moment Dominika arrived, the chief's eyes gleamed with hunger. He found every excuse to be near her, brushing too close, lingering too long. But Dominika had no patience for men like him. She played along just enough to keep him at bay, but nothing more. Instead, she focused on Nash. According to intelligence reports, he swam every morning at a local pool. So, Dominika began to observe him from a distance. One evening, she returned home and dyed her hair blonde. The next day, she signed up for a membership at the same pool Nash frequented. When filling out her registration form, she hesitated. Then, in a moment of defiance, she tore up the false identity she had prepared and wrote down her real name. It was reckless, it was dangerous, but it was also deliberate. She walked past Nash in a sleek swimsuit, deliberately catching his eye. Sure enough, when she left the pool, he called out to her. But to her surprise, Nash had already noticed her the day before. He had even realized she had changed her hair color overnight. That meant only one thing: he knew she was after him. A surge of tension passed between them. Dominika boarded a tram, her heart pounding. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled. The next day, Nash was nowhere to be found. When she returned her locker key at the front desk, the attendant fumbled, confused. "Strange. Your registration form is missing." Dominika's stomach tightened. Nash had taken it. He had her real name. And now, he was investigating her. By that evening, Nash's superiors had already run a background check. They learned that Dominika had once been a prima ballerina. More importantly, they discovered she was the niece of Vanya, the Russian intelligence officer. To Nash, a woman like her using her real name meant one of two things. Either she was an amateur, or she was desperate. And if she was desperate, there might be a way to turn her. The following night, during a diplomatic gala, Nash approached Dominika. They skipped the pretense, cutting straight to the chase. "You know who I am," she said. "And you know who I am," Nash replied. He didn't push, didn't interrogate. Instead, he made an offer. "Let's just talk. No lies, no games. Have dinner with me tomorrow." Dominika accepted. That night, when she returned home, she found their shared apartment empty. Marta was gone. Seizing the opportunity, Dominika broke into Marta's room, searching for anything useful. After rummaging through drawers and hidden compartments, she found it, a sealed package tucked into a crack in the wall. Inside were photographs, intimate photographs. They showed Marta with a woman, an American, a senator's chief of staff. A few pages deeper, Dominika found something even more damning, a journal detailing a secret intelligence transaction. Marta had arranged to sell classified information to the American woman for $250. The exchange was scheduled to take place in London. Before Dominika could process the discovery, she heard the front door open. Marta was back. She stepped inside, stopping in her tracks when she saw Dominika emerging from her room. Without a word, she handed Dominika a slip of paper. Dominika's stomach sank. She had refused the advances of the intelligence chief, and he hadn't taken it lightly. The note was a formal report to headquarters, accusing her of compromising the mission. She was in trouble, and Marta knew it. Dominika's pulse quickened. She knew what happened to agents who fell out of favor. Disgrace wasn't an option, survival was. That night, she skipped her dinner with Nash. Instead, she followed him home, watching from the shadows until she memorized his address. Then, she made her move. Tears welled in her eyes as she rang his doorbell, playing the role of the broken woman. She let her voice tremble. Her body shrank as if seeking protection. It was a classic tactic: disarm him with vulnerability, seduce him into trust. But Nash didn't bite. He studied her, arms crossed, then said, "You need to decide what you really want." For the first time, Dominika felt powerless. The usual tricks weren't working. She left, rattled, but determined to try again. The next day, Nash didn't show up at the pool. Growing desperate, Dominika took matters into her own hands. That night, she picked the lock to his apartment and let herself in. She moved quickly, combing through drawers and bookshelves, searching for anything useful. Nothing. As she turned to leave, her eyes landed on a half-empty glass of whiskey on the coffee table. Without hesitation, she slipped it into her bag. Back at her safe house, she barely had time to process what she'd done before she spotted an unwelcome figure sitting in the living room. Vanya. He had arrived unexpectedly, summoned by the intelligence chief. If Dominika had nothing to show for her time in Budapest, she was finished. She scrambled for leverage and blurted out the only thing that might save her. "Marta has a side operation. She's selling intel to the Americans. I saw it myself." Vanya's expression remained unreadable, but he paused. That was enough. He didn't press for details, didn't question her further. He simply rose to leave. At the door, he hesitated. "I forgot my coat." Dominika retrieved it for him. And in that moment, she acted on instinct, sliding her hand into the pocket. She felt the cool texture of his passport. She flipped it open just long enough to memorize his identification number before slipping it back. When she turned around, her blood ran cold. Marta was standing there, gun in hand. "You stole my mission," she hissed. Dominika held her ground. "You don't have the money." "I do. Vanya will cover the buy. You couldn't pull it off." "But I can." Marta's grip tightened on the gun, but she didn't pull the trigger. The next morning, Dominika bought a train ticket to Vienna. Before heading to the station, she made one final stop, a small bank. Through the glass doors, she scanned the tellers, locking onto a young, inexperienced clerk. He would be her mark. Minutes before closing, she rushed inside, feigning urgency. The clerk hesitated, but let her in. It was easy, too easy. That night, exhausted, she returned to the safe house. She barely stepped inside when she noticed something was off. Marta wasn't there, but the bathroom door was ajar, steam curling from within. Dominika pushed it open. Sitting on the edge of the tub was a familiar face, the assassin from the hotel. The man who had killed the Russian oligarch. He didn't move, didn't reach for his weapon. Instead, he simply regarded her with an amused smirk. "You should be more careful," he murmured. "People who know too much have a way of disappearing." Dominika's throat tightened. "Report this to the cops if you want," he continued, his voice low and unbothered. "Won't change a thing, but next time, if I think you've said a word about me." He trailed off, letting the silence finish the threat for him. Then, just like that, he was gone. Hours later, Dominika found herself sitting inside a Budapest police station, answering questions about Marta's murder. It was a waste of time. They wouldn't find anything. They never did. When she finally walked out of the precinct, Nash was waiting for her. "I have a deal for you," he said, his voice calm, measured. "You work for us now." Dominika's breath caught in her throat. It wasn't a question, it was a statement. For a moment, she considered running. Then she thought of Vanya, of the assassin, of the future that awaited her if she stayed in Russia. "What do you want from me?" she asked. Nash smiled. "The same thing you want. A way out." An hour later, she stepped inside a CIA safe house. 2 agents were waiting for her. They weren't smiling. A lie detector was strapped to her arm. Questions were asked, tested, repeated, but Dominika was trained for this. Her pulse never wavered. Her voice never shook. She passed. "I have conditions," she told them. "I want $30 a month, deposited into my account in Vienna." The agents exchanged glances. One scoffed. "You haven't given us a damn thing yet, and you're already making demands?" Dominika didn't blink. Instead, she leaned in and dropped her bombshell. "There's a senator's chief of staff selling missile intelligence to Russia. The deal's going down in London." Friday night. Silence. Then, finally, one of the agents nodded. "Tell us everything." Friday arrived. Dominika stood outside a luxury hotel. Prepared to play her most dangerous role yet, she took a breath, straightened her dress, and stepped inside. The game was on. In a high-end London hotel suite, a briefcase containing $250, courtesy of Russian intelligence, sat ready. Hidden in a secret drawer of the desk was a decoy disc, planted by the CIA. As Dominika entered the lobby's grand bar, she didn't expect an uninvited guest, the station chief, an aging intelligence officer. He had shown up under the guise of providing backup. But Dominika knew the real reason. Her uncle Vanya had sent him to keep tabs on her. The sight of him made her skin crawl. With barely concealed irritation, she ordered him to wait in the room. Not long after, the anticipated guest arrived, the chief of staff from the U.S. Senate. Dominika slid into the seat beside her and introduced herself as today's contact. The moment the woman noticed she wasn't dealing with her usual handler, Mata, she became visibly wary and made a move to leave. But Dominika, having thoroughly studied her target, knew one thing for certain: this woman was desperate for money. Using her practiced charm, she wove a persuasive argument, luring the chief of staff into the hotel suite for the exchange. Although hesitant, the woman's eyes lit up when she spotted the bag of cash. Her greed overriding her doubts, she handed Dominika the disc containing missile data for verification. Approaching the desk, Dominika reached for the secret drawer, only to find it jammed. Panic crept up her spine. She tried again, nothing. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she struggled to force it open. Each passing second raised suspicion in the station chief, who had been observing from across the room. Just as he was about to step in, a seasoned CIA handler, who had been monitoring the exchange from another location, took action. Disguised as a hotel manager, she interrupted with a fake customer satisfaction inquiry, buying Dominika the precious seconds she needed. With a final, desperate tug, the drawer slid open. She swiftly swapped the real disc for the fake one, completing the switch without a hitch. The transaction concluded smoothly, and before leaving, Dominika advised the chief of staff to wait an hour before exiting. But fate had other plans. The woman, too eager to claim her money, left the hotel immediately. As she reached the crosswalk, she lit a cigarette, only to realize too late that she was being watched. Special agents on both sides of the street had their eyes locked on her. Panic surged through her. She hurled the cash-stuffed bag into a trash bin and stumbled backward, only to be struck by an oncoming truck. The unexpected turn of events didn't go unnoticed. A Russian operative stationed outside the hotel witnessed everything and promptly reported it to the station chief. The old man wasted no time. He ordered the driver to head straight to the airport, telling Dominika that the head of security wanted to personally congratulate them. He then demanded she hand over the disc and her passport. Despite the rising tension, Dominika fought to maintain a calm demeanor. Meanwhile, Naz, who had just retrieved the real disc from the hotel room, received an urgent call, learning of the chief of staff's untimely death. His stomach clenched. Dominika's cover had likely been blown. Her life was now in imminent danger. He jumped into his car, racing toward the airport, hoping he wasn't too late. Bursting into the terminal, gun in hand, Naz scanned the crowd. His heart nearly stopped when he spotted Dominika at the boarding gate. Moments from disappearing forever, their eyes met. She shook her head subtly, a silent plea for him to stand down. He clenched his fists, swallowing his frustration. This wasn't his fight anymore. Watching her walk away, he knew the odds were stacked against her. Back at Russian intelligence headquarters, Dominika faced relentless interrogation. A stern-faced female officer loomed over her, demanding to know if she had leaked intel to the Americans. She denied everything. Her defiance only infuriated them further. Vanya, who had been quietly monitoring the session, finally lost patience. He barked an order, and the guards dragged her into another room, where the real torture would begin. Still, Dominika refused to crack. Again and again, she was hauled in for questioning. Again and again, she denied any betrayal. Finally, the female officer wordlessly turned her laptop around. Pressing play, the screen flickered to life with a brutal image. The station chief who had accompanied her to London, now lying dead from an execution-style gunshot wound. The officer stepped behind Dominika, raising a gun to the back of her head. One last chance, she murmured. Dominika's breath hitched, but her resolve held firm. The officer's finger tightened on the trigger. The gun fired. Dominika barely escaped death, her body trembling with an involuntary reaction to the sheer terror of the moment. Just then, Vanya stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "Tell me the truth," he commanded. Dominika took a steadying breath, forcing herself to project confidence. "Everything I did was to complete the mission you gave me, to earn the Americans' trust and expose their informant. Haven't I done exactly what you asked?" Vanya hesitated, his sharp eyes searching hers for any sign of deception. Finally, he exhaled and gave the order for her release. But Dominika knew better. She had only bought herself time. That night, Vanya met with his superiors. The intelligence director and academy head sat across from him, their faces hard. "She's compromised," the director said coldly. "If we confirm her betrayal, she must be eliminated." Under mounting pressure, Vanya nodded. "I'll handle it." When he returned home, he found Dominika waiting. She had come to say goodbye. But this time, she used every skill in her arsenal, turning the very techniques she had been trained to master against her own uncle. Deep down, she had always known, Vanya wanted more from her than just loyalty. Back in Budapest, she returned to Naz, playing the role of the defecting agent perfectly. She pushed for immediate relocation to the US and a lucrative financial arrangement. $250 wired to my account in Vietnam, she demanded. Naz agreed. He was already too far gone, caught in her web, and when she leaned in for a kiss, this time, he didn't resist. That night, she woke to a shift in the air. A shadow moved across the dimly lit room. A glint of wire caught her eye. Vanya had sent an assassin. Before she could react, the garrote tightened around Naz's throat. Dominika knew the playbook. She moved without hesitation, appearing to comply as she helped restrain Naz, feigning allegiance. But the moment the assassin let his guard down, she struck. The fight was short, brutal, and final. With Naz's help, she overpowered her would-be executioner, finishing him with cold precision. As dawn broke, Dominika stood over the lifeless body, her mind racing. She had burned every bridge. There was no going back to Russia, no safety net. But as she looked at the blood staining her hands, she realized something. She wasn't just a fugitive anymore. She was in control, and soon, she would be the one pulling the strings. Today's story comes to an end, but the journey of exploring great movies continues. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any exciting upcoming videos. Also, leave a comment sharing your thoughts on the movie. Your support is the biggest motivation for me to create even more quality content. See you in the next video.